welcome to the Overprepared DM podcast. My name is Jen.
My name is Nick.
And we're here with a lovely streamer and one of my very good friends, Austin, or Nearly Squid. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
It's me.
It's you. Tell everybody listening kind of who you are and like your experience with D&D, but baseline, because we'll get all into that.
Okay. So my name is Austin. I am Nearly Squid on Twitch. I play a variety of games. Right now I'm kind of stuck on a horror genre that I do not want to be doing, but everyone likes it, so I'm sticking with it. I'm scared all the time. But I like to play a lot of retro games. A Link to the Past randomizers are one of my favorite things. I was playing that earlier today, even.
So much fun. I
want to stream some more of that.
Retro, super fun.
Mm-hmm. Other than that, I am an aquarium nerd. I have a giant saltwater aquarium that I spend way too much time with. And I really want to get it on stream. I'm working on it. There's some technical difficulties with the cameras and water, you know.
Yeah, I feel
electricity in the water and stuff like that.
I think that'd be super fun, though. I know there's like little submarines that you can buy that like chat could probably control. That'd be kind of fun.
I was thinking, like, is there something like that where I could have a redemption where someone drives a little submarine around? I don't know. I don't know.
That'd be super fun. How long have you been playing D&D or Pathfinder? Because I know that you also play Pathfinder.
So, as a kid, I played in one D&D game for a very short amount of time because I didn't know anyone who wanted to play, really. So it was just like an online friend group from some game I used to play, and they had a short one-shot type thing they did, and I played a warlock. And I was very confused and did not know what was going on. I got back into it after the Adventure Zone. We all started listening to it, my friend group at the time. This has been, I want to say, 7 years ago?
Yeah.
8, 7-ish, somewhere around there. We all listened to that. They were all really into it. I had gone through Critical Role as well. So I wanted to play, and I convinced a couple of them to try it. None of them had played before, so it ended up being me and 8 players, I think, which was a lot to start out with.
Doesn't match my 12.
Does not match. Still madness.
I didn't. It's not that I started saying no to people. I just didn't know anyone else in College Station
That's fair.
that wanted to play. But yeah, my partner and then one of my friends' partners tried to play, even though they were not interested, and they were murder hobos the whole time. It was a good time, though.
That's good.
But that group we still play, usually a couple times a week.
It's awesome.
When did you start taking up the DM
I am a forever DM, forever and ever. I am always DM. I am playing as a player in a Pathfinder campaign right now.
Right.
So that's my one little bit I get to do. I did play in a D&D campaign prior to this. I was a Sorkadin. I really love that character.
What is a Sorkadin?
Sorcerer Paladin multiclass.
Oh my god, Paladin.
She was so fun to play. I love her so much.
Nick always starts off the podcast with the same question to every guest.
Yes. So thinking back to when you first started DMing, even though it sounds like you probably were just winging it back then too, but what's something that you did back then in prep that you wouldn't do today?
Honestly, back then I prepped way more than I ever would now. I didn't know what I was doing rules-wise, but I'm a person that, like, I get very focused on trying to make it immersive for my players. So I spent like an entire week making just a map of a house on grid paper, like ridiculously detailed. And then I was covering it with all like these papers so I could reveal them when they went in the doors.
Yeah, I love it.
And I made backstories for like everyone they could meet, and they didn't talk to literally any of them.
That's my sadness.
So I try not to do too much now, but I spent way too much time on maps for whatever reason. I am hand drawing them. I'm not an artist, so they were stressful for me. Now I like to just find some good ones and repurpose them. I think that's what I spent the most of my time doing that I should not have.
I still have like I still want to do I still want to DM that way. I still want to prep that way. But I just know that I would never get sleep, and I would never get to see my daughter or anything like that if I did that ever. So yeah, it's a hard thing to step away from, because there's something, it's like a weird thing that you love, but then you learn to love to hate, and it's a bottomless pit that you can never get out of, Jen.
I can just imagine you in your map making dungeon, and your daughter comes downstairs and you're like, no, I can't, I'm making maps.
I actually used to take one of my tables from my dungeon. I used to take one of my tables from a dungeon to our big room in the basement and let her play. And I would stand there and draw maps while she played at my feet around the table, and it just got to be too much.
I also did hand-drawn maps. When I was really, really getting into an in-person group, I went to Office Depot, Staples, and went to the office section and was just all up on those poster presentation grid papers that you can buy, and I bought an entire roll of those, and I made an entire city with street names. It was almost as extensive as Waterdeep. Like street names, you can
I did not do that much.
You can lift the roof of everything. So I also did a second copy, flipping over the graph paper, of the roofs lifted off.
That's
and you
cool.
can see, it was fun, and I do like to do art, so I won't say it looked bad. And in fact, it was too much, because it was just, here's the city map and you're like, cool, where's the tavern?
Right. I forgot the tavern.
Oh, right.
It's like one of the core things in D&D. Damn it. All right.
But I do agree with what Squid said, is that now I would say for more quick games, or even with my long-term campaigns, I will repurpose used ones online, or people craft and create maps in their own time, and I will just take those and use them for my games. I am also a patron of Animated Dungeon, where I get a lot of animated dungeons. So they have little things like fire or lava is flowing. It just looks cool. And I'd say that the animations for me has been what I've done to immerse people into online games. More, at least. What would you say you've been doing to immerse people in online games? Because in person.
So I wanted to do those. Yeah, I miss the in-person stuff.
I do too.
I just recently threw away all my paper and stuff, so it's it's never happening again. But I try to do the animated maps, but a lot of my players don't have a PC that can really handle it on Roll20. It just starts dragging a lot, so I haven't gotten to really play with those too much. My biggest thing lately, which because you're in my campaign,
true.
I have started doing these weekly video summaries of what happened, using a bunch of little GIFs just to kind of combine sort of what I remember about what happened. And when we first started the campaign, I gave sort of a skeleton of what the campaign could be, in the same sort of format.
With a bunch of different little videos that you found, and some of them are very silly, as seen on TV products, and it's very comical. I do like that. What have you done, Nick, to immerse your players in an online space? Because I know you guys had an in-person game on stream that went remote, which is doing kind of like a hybrid right now, doing both.
Yeah. I mean, it is really hard online. I think what I've been doing, I haven't done a lot recently, and I'm kind of kicking myself for it now because I realize I haven't been doing it lately. But what I like to do is in my intro, when I do the recap, and then when I go into where they are now, what's happening now, where they left off the last week, I do like to type out like it's the one thing I do where it's like I write too much, but I do it to really set the scene, make sure I describe everything that's around them, what it smells like, what it looks like, what it sounds like, everything. And I think just getting them in that mindset in the beginning, it kind of keeps them in that mindset going forward. So I try to set that up front. But I always just try to remind myself when they go somewhere new, even if I'm not prepared for it, like describe every sense that they're experiencing in this place, just so there's no gaps in their brains that takes them out of the immersion. So that's really worked for me, and I actually kind of like it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Squid actually did something that I stole completely and am also doing, but he got a new group of people. Not everybody knew each other prior, and had them all make the map together in a game of A Quiet Year. And I really liked that. It got people invested in the story because you wrote it together. And it's just a framework. It's not the story, but it's very fun and cool. And I know playing with them that they're more invested in kind of like the backstories of things and the lore of the world. And I feel like that's a really cool way of getting people immersed. And I played a game of A Quiet Year, which is a tabletop game that is available on Roll20. It's also a card game that you can buy in person. You can also just look at the PDF and play with a regular deck of cards that isn't specific to a quiet year. Sure is a wild year sometimes, though. So
it does play out that way.
And I played, and for this new campaign that I'm going to start running, Mondays on Feywild and Out in about 4 months.
Shameless plug.
Exactly. And we crafted basically like patrons, like through this story that we played. And that was really cool. And I talked with someone who's going to be playing in that, and they said that they absolutely want to utilize that person as a patron for their character. And I was like, that is so cool, because now they know like the backstory of their patron, and I think that is such a cool way to get people involved without just giving them paperwork. Or I would say, when I am making a character, I kind of look at the base elements of gods or patrons and deities. I just kind of base it off that. I'm like, oh, this one's live, laugh, love. I'm gonna go and do this one as my patron. So I think that that's a way of really kind of getting them out of that, and I think I'm gonna keep doing that forever. That was a really cool thing that you did. I really like it. So
I had a lot of fun with it. It has really helped me with the story we're doing. I've come up with most of it just based off of the things we made in that one little map. Pretty much everything surrounding the area you're in, at least, I've planned out from that, as much as I plan things out. But I really like that, we didn't make a ton of characters in A Quiet Year because we're not supposed to, but the ones we did, everyone is very invested in already, and they're like the key players. So it's nice that, when a player's from a town and they're like, oh, I've been here forever and I know everyone, but I actually don't know anything about this place because, we're making this up. It's nice that they have sort of an idea of where the place came from.
Yeah.
They have the history already.
So that's a really good suggestion if you're listening and you're kind of like thinking of ways of how to immerse your players more into the lore of your world. I think another topic that could be talked about with immersion is how do you get a group of people who have never played before immersed in the first 10 minutes of the game? Go, Nick.
Yeah, that is a long process, honestly. Here we go. Guess what? We're looping back to session 0.
Hey!
It starts from session 0. Yeah, set that expectation. Like, hey, when we sit down to play, let's fucking play, right?
Yeah.
Let's get into this game. Put down the phone. Sure, if it's combat and you have 12 players like Jen did once, and it's going to be 8 hours until it's your turn. Sure, be on your phone. But
No, don't be on your phone.
But on the phone, like, get into it. Let the DM draw you in. Like, buy into it, right? Yeah. So that expectation, and practice describing your world, what's going on around them. Tying your players to the world. One of the things I like to do, and I have this whole worksheet that I give my players before a campaign starts. It's like, 6 questions for like 4 stages of life, and Phil, just give me this information, and I'm going to use bits and pieces of that to tie you to this world and tie you to the story. And then I also give them lore about the world. And whenever that lore needs to come up, I let them describe it. So I kind of put it on them to know that. And when it comes up, they're invested in that piece of lore.
Yeah.
And when it's coming from a player, it's like when you're in high school and your best friend told you something they learned in math class that that you were just in, that you didn't remember because it was the teacher telling you, not your friend.
Right.
It's a different thing when a player tells you what's going on versus the DM. So that's really helped me out a lot too.
Yeah. How would you immerse someone in 10 minutes? Go!
So my main go-to, which I don't know how well it works, but for me it works. When I'm even just setting things up, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so into this. It's just like the music. I really get way too invested. I still overprepare music. My music catalog on Roll20 is overwhelming. I really like trying to keep it interesting, like change the music for each area, but have it be sort of themed. I have all my stuff categorized on the side. I feel like for people that are new, that are trying to like get into the headspace, that aren't necessarily used to role playing or anything, it can kind of give them something other than trying to come up with dialogue before they're invested in it. To me, it helps set the scene a little. That's just me. I'm very much a music person for D&D.
Yeah. I would say for a campaign, I do the same thing. I do a lot of music prep to the point where it's like you moved to a different room. The music changed. It's ridiculous. I have also caught myself finding a song that had a great moment of breakdown where I'm like, ooh, a fight starts right on this beat. And I've caught myself trying to speak up until that point and then saying roll for initiative as the music changes. And it's so much fun for me. I don't know if anyone ever notices, but it's so much fun.
That's something I always wonder with it too. I'm like, has anyone even noticed it all? I'm getting emotional over here about my music and like, I don't know if anyone cares.
I did that to an extreme. This was a few months ago. A beloved NPC of the party died, and the session ended on that. And my paladin, before the session ended, she said, I'm going to use my maul to just flatten the body of the person who killed this NPC. So I was like, cool, we're ending there. And then I spent a whole day just planning out a playlist and writing as I'm planning out this playlist. And I timed my writing up with the music, so it shifted it was just
fun.
It was too much. It was too much. I don't know if anybody else caught it, I did. It made me happy.
You know who's going to notice?
DMs or players.
The people listening right now who are
Yes.
saying in their car right now, me too.
Yep. Yes. Yep.
We hear you. We're the same.
Yep.
But do you do the same things like with a session 0 or over planning music? Do you do the same things in a one shot with a group that's not going to come back together again and do a full campaign? Do you do as much lore prepping and music prepping and map prepping? Do you do that?
I don't do usually a session 0 for those because it's typically, if I do a one shot, it's people I'm already playing with. We're already pretty familiar, so either we'll just talk kind of through text about what the background is and just go from there, just let them make a character. If we have a session 0, it's real minimal. I still do a lot with the music though, because that's just part of how I get into even coming up with what's going on. I go through my music catalog and just try and find a vibe for the session, and it helps me build from there. I'm not a huge, I know you guys talk about this a lot, but I'm not a huge over-preparer anymore because I was spending so much time doing it that I just make a skeleton for what I'm going to do now and improv everything else. So I try not to, for one shots, get too crazy with it.
That makes sense. What about you, Nick?
Yeah, I think the mindset is different in a one shot too. I think as a player, I'm not too worried about my immersion, So I think it's a different mindset as a player going into it as well. So it's a lot. It's there's more freedom to be weird and goofy and do the crazy things you wouldn't necessarily do in a campaign where there are lasting consequences for your character that you love so much. But I definitely do the music for one shots. Like you said, session 0 is just, at that point, it's all through text or a phone call or a Zoom call or something like that, real quick. Yeah, nothing huge. But I still, I actually think I would probably write more for each individual room in the dungeon for a one shot than I would for a campaign, just because I don't have to keep doing it after this is done and over with, and just kind of get it all out on this one shot and type it all up and just scratch that itch, and when it's done I can throw it all away anyway. It's fun.
For one shots, I actually do them pretty frequently. I do one shot a month for random individuals in my Discord community. And I have found that I prepped heavily one time. And I keep running the same one because it's a bunch of different people.
That's the best. That's the best.
Totally valid.
I have changed the one shot one time, and that was a pre-written one that I just thought was super interesting, and that was my very first time trying to do something pre-written for a one shot, and I liked it. I just felt I was like, no, I want my werewolves. For anyone listening, sorry, I ran it last month, but I think it's fun, and eventually I'll change to a different one, but I have all the music prepped, and I have all the maps prepped, and I just have to remake little tokens really quick for new people, and it's the least amount of work for me, but it's also a really fun one-shot, I think. Everyone who's done it has always left with big smiles and felt really good, and I'm like, that's what I want to do. But it kind of... What I did say was that I have a bunch of random people who play together. So, I don't play them with my friends. Not that you guys are not my friends. I don't play them with people that I actively speak to every day. So I play them with people who signed up, and then we do a random poll, a pull, and then people come and join. But immersing people who don't know each other is a different kind of ball game. I feel like it more falls on the professional DMing. I'm doing air quotes. You can't see me. Professional DMing and really trying to get a random group of people immersed in the first 10 minutes of the game. It's like getting someone hooked on a book in the first 2 pages or the first page even. And I found that doing a role play activity in the first 2 minutes has helped so much. And doing the same one shot over and over has actually gotten me better at just kind of like, how do I do this? So I found I plopped them into a tavern, because all adventures start in a great tavern, especially one shots. And the first time I ran it, I gave them no prompt. I said, you're in a tavern and this is happening, and someone comes and takes your order and then they leave, and then I just stay quiet. And then it was quiet and no one said anything, and I was like, she comes back, and then I felt like I was pulling teeth. The second time, this last time, I did a prompt. I said, you guys have just come back from a mission and you're talking about what went wrong, and you you build off the story. And I said, it's just a role play activity to get us into it, and your name starts with the letter A of the alphabet, so you start. And then they just start saying, oh, well, at least so and so was there, and then that person kind of speaks. It's a little bit of a popcorn activity, and it worked so well, and they were into it in the first 5 minutes, and it was great. I was just like, I gave them a prompt. Your conversation falls on the mission that you just came from and what went wrong. When you guys are just talking about what went wrong, but you did it, and it was great. So highly suggest for anyone listening, if you're trying to get some people invested in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, that is always the challenge, is, a new group of people, some of them that haven't played before. Just trying to get everyone involved and into it right away. That's a good idea, though, to do a little activity.
And even worse than that, you could have somebody who's been playing D&D for 10 years but has never role-played. They've only been mechanics, and that's, that's really hard, is to get people who've been playing for a while who've never role-played to role-play and get immersed. And then they're just like, what do I hit with my sword? Like, no.
What do you hit with your words? I definitely feel that way. And with individuals who do a lot of number crunching, I would say, as Squid actually mentions, is I feel like you're more recently getting into liking roleplay, and you kind of used to the numbers game. So where's your head at with that?
So I've always liked sort of a 50-50. But my players, the ones that I started with and still play with, are very much this is a tabletop game minus the role play. I try and get it in there. I still do all my side of things. I do the voices and stuff. And occasionally, they'll get into it somewhat. But they are very much into the mechanics more. And that's part of why we went to Pathfinder, because it's way heavier on that.
Crunchy.
Which I really enjoy Pathfinder, and how detailed you can get with making your character. You can make some really interesting things, but it does sometimes take away from the roleplay possibilities. 5e does such a good job with making that easier. And especially for new players too. It's just easy in general to get into role-playing with that system, in my mind. I would like to do more role-play, but the group I have, you and Jen, is probably the first one I've run that has been even remotely into it. So it has been very nice to have, people talk amongst themselves and me actually get to just sit, which our first few sessions, I was like, I don't know what is happening. People are actually talking.
What do I do with my hands? I don't know.
So what did you do, speaking to a new DM listening, what did you do to kind of get a group that likes roleplay?
I mean,
minus asking me to join.
So humble. So humble.
Just
role players, Jen. Role players, Jen.
I mean, I asked people that I knew were more into just like stories in general, not even just D&D, but like people
That's
who like to
true.
read a lot. People that would be more interested in crafting a story than necessarily being the best at something.
Yeah.
I try not to be a power gamer, but the way we've played our Pathfinder stuff, it's like ingrained in me slightly. But I really like when people will, have downsides to their character and actually play into them. And I feel like this group is doing that, and it's very refreshing. It's a lot more mentally stimulating for me, I guess, as DM even.
I feel like Nick's group, the Crit Chicks, also really get into like their character flaws, which is super cool.
Yeah, it's great. It's great fun. It's fantastic. Yeah, no. I love it. I'm serious. No, I do love it. I do love it.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
just
great.
joking. No, just right now, my current campaign, like, I have a couple of characters who are really flawed. Like,
yes.
really, really flawed. And like, they terrorize my NPCs not in like a murder hobo way, but like in a way where like they're like, these are the heroes of this. These are our heroes. This is
Dismiss. I totally get that. I really, really enjoy players that really get into their character, but also get into their other players' characters.
Right.
I really love those people and will cling on to them. Like, you're gonna play in every game that I ever run ever because you are the what I think I've mentioned possibly before is like Travis from Critical Role. He spends the entire game being a hype man.
Yeah.
Like, he's paying attention and he is so interested in what other people are doing. And if I find someone who does that, they stay with me.
Right.
Because if you have a whole group of people who are hyping each other up and really focusing on what each other can do, what they can't do, and things like that, it really leads to a moment where 45 minutes have passed and I haven't said a word because they're just talking at a table for dinner, and now we have people who have best friends, and it's so much fun. And that's a specific reference. I had a game where players were talking at a table and they were deciding which one of them was whose best friend in character. It was very adorable. And then one of them was learning what best friends were, and it was so cute, and I loved it. But yeah, like 45 minutes go by and you're not even saying anything, and it's great. All my 10 pages of notes don't even matter.
They're ready for next time.
Exactly. But kind of like number crunchy, I always get, as a DM, I get kind of nervous when I talk with my players about their characters and they talk about how effective they are. And they talk about the excitement that they have about doing so much damage, or showing me even like little things, give me a little red flag that they might be a power gamer if they kind of count out or show the numbers of their the highest max that they could possibly do damage wise, and they haven't done it. They're just doing the math because it's fun to them. That makes me nervous as a DM, and maybe that's my preference, but power gaming makes me very nervous.
What part about it makes you nervous? Just that it might unbalance your encounters?
Well, there's only so many additional mobs that I can add to an encounter before it just has to be over. Like, they won. It wasn't challenging. The end. I sent in 4 additional things, and they killed them in 2 hits, and now it's over. Now I feel, with my experience, people who are power gaming or who talk about their effectiveness, it makes me nervous that they are going to walk all over everything that's happening. The character, not necessarily the player, but the character becomes very cocky. I can do anything, I'm going to talk down to guards, and it becomes a kind of a chore for me to put someone in their place.
Right.
As a person who lives in this world versus the person who runs the world.
Right.
But I would say that's really what makes me nervous, is just the extra work that I might have to do. And it's not, I don't like doing that. I don't like having to put someone in their place. And sure, someone listening could say, well, then just let them play the way that they want to play. I'm going to say to you, I am also a player. So if I'm not having fun, then no one's having fun. Rocks fall, everyone dies. New game.
Yeah.
Except I've never done that. I have never TPK'd a group because I didn't like what was happening. I adapted and made changes and tried to make it more fun. Or ultimately, people would filter out themselves and the game would come to a close, unfortunately. But things happen.
I think I'm just used to my power gamers at this point. I think it would be harder, like in a group with a bunch of role players, you have one power gamer. I could see that definitely being a problem. But in an entire group of them, they're like all into it together, at least.
Yeah. It's the shared fun. Yeah.
Right. They're hyping each other up on what they can do, and they're like boasting to each other about what they can do. But I don't think that the two mix well. I think that is
for sure,
definitely a valid point, that it would probably cause problems in your games that have less of that, as opposed to what I'm used to usually.
Well, how do you handle, not that it's bad, because power gaming, as you said, kind of inadvertently, it's like it's up to the group. What do they like to do? But how do you handle encounters? How do you build around power gamers? Like, how do you build around people who want to do a lot of damage?
So usually, I will punish people for metagaming when I do what I do, because I usually change it significantly. Even on the fly, the boss is changing completely. They're getting all these extra things that, I mean, if something has happened, I'm not going to be like, well, now they have fire resistance. They didn't a second ago. But usually before they get there, I've already tweaked whatever. I just use the template of a creature, and then I add things to it that I know that this creature or person would know about them as a team from whatever they've been doing. They're at this point, they're renowned heroes. So the enemies are going to know how they do things. Like, we've heard this is your strategy of how you deal with stuff. I just happen to be prepared to counterspell all of those spells that you usually do. A lot of the time, I don't rely on more enemies, because it either goes one way or the other. If they're weaker enemies, they just are cannon fodder, basically. But if you go too strong, then it can become overwhelming the other way. And then I'm having to like dial back what they're doing and fudge a bunch of rolls that I'm not actually hitting them all, because I don't want to TPK. I really don't even like killing players, even in Pathfinder, which is basically the entire game is killing your players. But it's just, it's a different mindset that I just want them to be able to pump out those numbers, but have the combat last long enough that everyone gets to do something at least once. I like the tension to be high, so I try my best to go for their weaknesses, because they've built themselves very specifically. So if I can target their weakness, then they have to think about like what they've done with their character and how they could fix it. But the flip side of that is with the new group that you're in, I find myself not over-tuning things, but I still change things just because I want them to be different than the usual monster manual version of things. But I feel like sometimes I get a little too unique with them. Like, oh, it has this, this strange extra thing it does. And I'm like, oops, I almost killed everyone with it.
Has there ever been a time, Nick, where you have homebrewed a monster too much that you thought it was too much with the homebrew versus keeping it the way it should be? The way it should be, being its regular stat block.
That is a great question. I don't think I have, because I like beating up my characters. um, yeah. No, I mean, what I usually will like edit and homebrew are, things that aren't powerful enough, something that they're like, oh, it's a bullywug, this is going to be easy. Oh, he has how many hit points? Holy shit, how many attacks does he have? What's happening?
Right.
But yeah, somehow I'm actually unable to create encounters that really mess with my party somehow. I don't get it. They're just good at beating my things.
Yeah.
I will say that the one thing that I did that was like, I kind of had to put, I don't want to say put them in their place, but like make them realize they're not invincible. They're not the biggest, baddest things in the world. Was I created a divination wizard who had, portents and stuff. And he was a bad guy NPC. And when they met him at a dinner, and he sat him down and he said, "I'm placing a shot glass of poison in front of you. I suggest that you will take a shot." And, it wasn't really poison to his, because he's the only one who knew he knew it wasn't poison. Mm-hmm. And he uses divination to like make them roll low, whoever would roll high. And they all took this shot like, oh shit. And he was like, okay, now I have your attention. Right. So that was, just someone that, and I think the great thing about it though, was that it messed with their heads so much that they still talk about him. It's been like 2.5, 3 years. They still talk about him like he is a toxic dude at work. Like it's great. I love it.
Oh, geez. I haven't really scared my players into talking about someone the entire campaign. I feel like it's always been the weird characters that they've talked about.
Yeah.
Or, actually, Squid has a great character that you could talk about.
Susan?
Yes.
Yes. Susan came about in my first campaign. They were just going through it's like a traveling caravan of merchants and stuff that were kind of passing the way they were going. And they wanted to see an alchemist. And I was like, okay, it's this old gnome lady. So I did my gnome voice, which is a lot like this. And I think they just loved how much they were making me have to do it, that they kept talking to her. They wanted to know everything about her. I do not prep a lot of stuff as far as like names anymore. But with her, that was when I was trying to prep things still. But the caravan I didn't prep for because I thought they were just going to go past it. It was just supposed to be like, you notice that there's a caravan going by.
Oh, I'm going to stop the caravan.
Yeah,
because they're going by, and you mentioned it, so therefore it's important.
Well, here's the thing: it's physics. It's physics. It's a physical law. If you have a caravan and you prep the caravan, your players are going to pass it by.
Exactly.
If you have a caravan and didn't prep your caravan, your characters are going to talk to it. That is a law. That is physical law. It always happens that way in Dungeons and Dragons. So always prep your caravan.
My gosh.
Well, Susan is now in every campaign I do. I've played as Susan in another game. I just say that she's like a planar traveler at this point. She's been a god before. She's done it all.
Didn't feel like it anymore, so she's not.
So in that campaign, my party is not super serious.
Right.
So I try and keep it interesting, but also like light enough that they're not losing focus on it. So basically, the gods in this world were in like a business. So they all worked at like, I don't remember what I called it, God Inc. And then the hells were the opposite business, this other corporate structure that was like trying to take their secrets and stuff. So there were gods that had died, and they were, they needed resumes sent in for these new positions to be filled. So my players got to like fill the roles of some of these gods eventually. So they got all these new abilities and stuff, but it was all in the like corporate world setting.
That's very silly.
So Susan became like a god of trading in that one because she was already their merchant person. But yeah, that she just got overwhelmed with the paperwork and had to move on to greener pastures.
Put in her 2 weeks of being a god. Done.
I don't feel like it anymore. I feel like I reuse, and I have mentioned this before, I do reuse store names because I like to put the humor in my campaigns in the store names because it's subtle. It's still funny, but it's not taking away from the game. Not that Susan takes away from the game. Didn't mean to follow with that. But I always get nervous about adding too much comedy to my games unless the idea is to be comedic. Like we're having a fun, silly one-shot, or we're doing a silly campaign, or whatever. But if it's like a serious campaign and you're the hero of the world, I still want to bring some humor to it. Right. So I have a couple recorded lines from my one single friend that works at Funimation. I asked them if they wanted to be cool and tell some really shitty D&D jokes. And so I have a store/event place called The Potato is an Illusion, and it's a comedy club. And so whenever they go in there, I just put those recorded lines in the background as someone who is doing stand-up in the background.
That's great.
It's really fun. I have only ever had this experience twice because not a lot of people go there. The first time that I had it in my game, I kind of put like a operation behind because I wanted to show off these lines that I had my friend recorded, and they're really bad jokes. Like, what was it? Why is Swiss cheese a cleric's favorite?
Because it's holy.
Because it's holy. Yeah, they're really bad. Like, but that's like a fun thing for me. And then I also like naming places. I have the Stumble Inn, which is an inn in a store that you take like 1 point of damage because you stumbled inside.
That's funny.
And no matter how many times you try to avoid stumbling inside, you take more damage the more you tried to avoid it because you like it's so funny. Little things like that. That's how I add like comedy to my games. But do you have comedy in your games, Nick? And how do you integrate? No.
No, honestly, I don't. So what happens is I don't create the comedy.
Yeah.
I let my characters drive the comedy.
That's for
one
sure.
One of my favorite things I've ever done is I had this tavern. And there's this pit fiend who was this arch enemy he was a human at one point, and he was an arch enemy of these ancient, heroes from eons past. And this pit fiend would just show up at this bar. He'd walk through a portal from the Nine Hells into this bar, because this is where the heroes used to go when they were alive. And he would just sulk over the fact that he couldn't kill these heroes. So there was this like super evil pit fiend that would just show up at this bar randomly, and my players ate it up. They loved it. But one of the characters was in a relationship with a NPC who was a paladin, and she was like, "Do not tell Dorn about." His name was Charlie. The pit fiend's name was Charlie because why not? Do not tell do not tell Dorn about Charlie. Do not do it. Do not do it. Dorn found out, this paladin. She's like, don't go down there. Please don't go down there. It's going to be a problem. But they go off on an adventure, and they come back, and the first place they go is back to their home base, and someone's like, yeah, Dorn's at the tavern. And they're like, oh shit, we got to go. And they go into the tavern, and Dorn's sitting at the table with the pit fiend, having a drink with the pit fiend, talking about how they're going to kill each other one day.
That's so good.
So I let them, their realization of the world like drive the comedy, so it's tied back to them a little bit. So
yeah, that's cute.
Yeah, I definitely write in darker themes. A lot of my shit is dark in my campaigns, but I let the characters bring the players bring the levity up and drive the comedy when it's applicable and they're ready for it. So yeah.
I definitely also write in a very I have to edit this for it to be live dark. Like our very first campaign that was on Fateful Encounters, when that was a stream, was I DM'd it. The main plot was about these two gods that were fighting for the magic that came from this plane. And so they inserted their seed into the women of the area, and every couple thousand years a doppelganger would be born, and they would have to kill that the town would have to kill that doppelganger in order for that god to not come and take it itself, therefore also taking the entire world. You know, you don't think about that being a bad topic until you realize that's a kid. This is live. So the last few games of that campaign, they found the child because they were the child was kind of kidnapped by several different groups. They went somewhere, your princess is in a different castle type situation. And for different power, like what they believed they would achieve by being the people to sacrifice this child. So while the premise was cool to me, that's a really dark theme.
Yeah.
But I was like, but it's so cool. And everyone liked it, but still, like, there was those little nodes where people in chat would joke, like, about, don't let them kill the child. Like, you're on stream. I'm like, but in order for me to kind of, like, not have that happen, I made the child a construct that couldn't be killed, and he ended up being the reincarnation of that god. And then they joined the child to murder the god, and it was cool. It was very cool. It was fun.
I think the darkest themes I've had was in a pirate-themed one I did with my main group. They wanted to be not evil, but they wanted to do something morally questionable, and sort of toe that line. And I was using an AP, pre-written AP, for it, because at the time I had no time to do anything. So if I was going to run it, it was going to be pre-written. And Pathfinder's pretty dark sometimes, but there was some real dark stuff. And some of it I was like, this doesn't go far enough for long enough. Like, it's mentioned and then it's gone. But you're like, you're pirates, and like, I'm gonna push this and see how they do with it. They became like good pirates because of it. Like, it pushed them into just being hero people again.
Now they're
these
heroes
people
with
are
a
so
ship.
horrible.
That is so funny. I do feel like pirate themes are the easiest to kind of get dirty, you know? Because they're
it's expected.
Smugglers and gross and evil kind of people, and they're self-centered and they think about themselves, and it's hard to see that happen and then be like, I also want to do that. Some people may totally get into it, and that's on them.
I played in a really, really dark camp. Well, it only lasted for a couple of sessions because that stream fell apart. That D&D group fell apart. It was drama. Won't get into it. But the DM had this idea for an evil campaign, and it was a really good idea. And the players were all on board for it. And we were all siblings. The players were all siblings, and we all had to impress Dad. And I mean, you want to talk dark? It got so dark.
That's so
I mean,
sad.
Yeah. But it was fun. It was definitely a fun experience to explore that.
Yeah.
But I wish we could keep playing. I loved the characters. everyone kind of had something on somebody else, and they would, manipulate each other, but we had to stick together. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about murder and stuff. That was what we were doing, just
Am I
murdering
impressing
people.
you, Dad?
Yeah.
Notice me.
I was a warlock with mask many faces. I would turn into like one of our enemies and then go commit a crime and then turn back into me and leave, and just like, it was yeah.
That's
yeah, it was a good time, but definitely not for everybody.
Yeah,
that's true.
Not everyone can go that dark, but yeah, dark is fun if you can pull it off, for sure.
I always want to play an evil character with this group that I'm getting to play as a player as in that Pathfinder game.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like they get very focused on knowing I'm evil when my character hasn't done that yet.
Yeah.
Expressed anything.
Yeah.
So I've never really gotten to play out an evil player character ever. Other than Susan, but that's kind of a mixed thing anyway.
Right.
She's already an established character, but I make these backgrounds for them. I've tried to do it twice, but usually I just have them exit, and like, you can use them as a villain later if you want. I feel like this is putting too much of a wrench into party dynamics, even though my character isn't doing anything really at all yet. But everyone knows for some reasons.
Know. Yeah.
So now I play the opposite.
There's also a benefit to players not talking about their classes or their backstories before the game. And that's something that's I've a little bit been integrating into my normal game starting procedures. And I've really liked it because it gets kind of that away. It teaches people not to metagame as well.
Right.
But it also gets you thinking about what they're doing. But also, I didn't know you were evil, so obviously my character isn't going to do anything about this because you didn't do anything. I've definitely had that happen at my table where someone has stolen something, and then that night someone suddenly decides to go through their bag, and they never have before, and I'm just like, okay, your metagaming is ridiculous, but. You just learn over time, like, what's fun for you, and you learn that it's not fun to metagame. Ultimately, you have more fun when you don't do it. Listen here. We have talked about so much in the last hour. Squid, if you had one piece of advice to someone who was asking you how to DM, what would you say? What's your best piece of advice to give new DMs?
I mean, my best piece of advice, I don't know how well it works for other people, but I think it's good to just try not to get so invested in your own story that you've written that you can't see the world happening. It's part of why I've moved to making these skeletons for my campaigns, because so much more can happen, and I'm not worried about trying to maintain this like perfect story that I have written out.
Yeah.
It turns into a lot of railroading, and the players lose their like faculty. Like, that's the whole reason they want to play. And if you kind of take that away from them, you're playing everyone then, kind of, as the DM.
Yeah.
It's not really what it's supposed to be. So I would just say, A, don't over-prepare, which is hard to do. But just don't get so attached to your own story that you feel like you're writing a novel and these people are just sort of playing predetermined roles in it.
Yeah.
Definitely. You can excitedly prepare. Prepare.
Right.
Is that what I said? You can excitedly prepare, but you can't over-prepare, because then it begins to kind of sink away from what the game should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree
Makes
with
sense.
that. Definitely. Well, it has been so nice to talk to you. Lovely
Thank you
friend.
for having me.
Of course. My name is Jen, and you can find me at Jen is Online anywhere you could possibly think of, basically. And
My name is Nick. You can find me at EmoAasimar on the socials and Southwest Gaming Society on Twitch.
And I am Austin. You can find me at Nearly Squid on Twitch, and pretty much everywhere else as well. No one has ever taken that name from me.
And all of Squid's socials will be down in the links if you want to go and scroll and click on those and tell him hello for us. I hope your ride to work or your bath, what time or whatever you've done right now listening was great. And we will see you in 2 other Sundays. So.
Enjoy your bath, I guess.
Bye.
Bye.